How do we listen to those who've been hurt and abused in the church while at the same time ignoring the mockers and the critics?
It's time for The Line of Fire with your host, biblical scholar and cultural commentator, Dr. Michael Brown. Your voice for moral sanity and spiritual clarity. Call 866-34-TRUTH to get on The Line of Fire. And now, here's your host, Dr. Michael Brown.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Line of Fire. This is Michael Brown. I just came back from ministering in Texas over this week in Fort Worth, Texas. So right in the midst of the DFW area that has been so shaken by major scandals in recent days and weeks. And one colleague of mine involved with one of the major churches where a scandal was hit said it's like a bomb went off. And so many people questioning and struggling and in a sense of trauma. And then at the same time, false things circulating and false charges circulating. And it's a time of real upheaval, but a time when I believe God is shaking his church and God is refining his church. And this is a time when if we can say, Lord, do a fresh work in me and show me everything in my life that needs to change, or our church or our system. Lord, send your refiner's fire to purify, shake what must be shaken, that only the unshakable may remain. It's a terrifying time. It's a time of tears. It's a time of pain, mourning, grief, disorientation, a time when we're hearing about so many who've been hurt and abused, for whom our hearts break. At the same time, it's an awe-inspiring moment as God himself is at work. This is The Line of Fire. This is Michael Brown. I'd love to hear from you on this subject today, what you're going through, what's happening in your own life, issues you may have had with me in terms of processing how we handle these types of crises, or questions for me. 866-348-7884. 866-34-TRUTH. Last Thursday, I was in New York City, Thursday night, speaking at a Stop the Anti-Semitism rally, Stop the Hate, with over 1,000 people right in the heart of New York City in Times Square. Beautiful, powerful event, believers coming together to take a stand. There were Jewish people there who were not followers of Jesus, but so appreciative of the stand that was taken. And it was not a night to bash Palestinians. It was not a night to bash Muslims. It was a night to say we stand with Israel as much as we care about every human being in the Middle East. So that was Thursday night. Friday morning, I met with a pastor and a staff in New York, hungry, thirsty for revival, crying out, believing they're at the edge, knowing that New York needs a move of God, knowing the great spiritual strongholds that are there. And then went from there to Fort Worth for a Reformation conference. And what blessed me there was so many young people at the conference. I was maybe the oldest one there at 69, but there were so many teenagers, even younger, and then folks in their 20s and 30s and young families. It gives a lot of hope in the midst of shaking and upheaval that God is on the move. Okay, before we dig into this more deeply, before we focus on the subject of how do we give voice to those hurting, those struggling, those who've been hurt, those who've been abused, those who've been sinned against, those who are disoriented by what's happened in their churches, how do we listen to them without hearing the voice of the gossipers, the false accusers, the mockers? How do we process this? And what have I done well or not well in helping us process this? We'll talk about it. But you can call in 866-34-TRUTH. Let me remind you, though, if you're not getting our Frontline newsletter, it comes out once a month. It is informational. It is inspirational. It is impartational, from the Hebrew word study every month to a lead message that'll stir your heart, to great testimonies, to book excerpts. It's all free. It's digital. It's beautifully formatted and presented. We'd love to get it out to you every month. Just take 30 seconds. Go to thelineoffire.org, thelineoffire.org, and just click subscribe. And you fill out, take you a few seconds, and we'll get you on our welcome tour. I believe you'll be blessed, edified, helped, encouraged, and strengthened. Okay. So let's go back to the situation with Mike Bickle in Kansas City. The shocking accusations that came against him last year that we heard about in October. last year, just shocking allegations, rocked so much of the church world, the prayer movement world, the charismatic world. Mike, I consider to be a real friend. We didn't hang out a lot, didn't see each other a lot, but I consider him to be a real friend. I consider him to be a real man of God. I looked at him as a great example of a man living a humble life, a prayerful life, a godly life. So these accusations was just heartbreaking to hear. On the other hand, I knew some of the people who were involved in working with those who said that they'd been sinned against. And they were the ones bringing these charges. And I wasn't super close with them, but I knew some of them decently well to know that they should be trusted as serious servants of the Lord. So I got called into the situation early November. And at that time, it was an immediate call for a third-party investigation because I said I won't get involved unless there's a third-party investigation that's called for external that will look at this and evaluate it. And if your current investigation is not sufficient, you have to immediately be willing to switch over to someone else that's nationally recognized Christian organization. So I only got involved based on those assurances. And then there was a process that was put in place by a Christian attorney who's worked with victims of clergy abuse and other things for many, many years. A Christian attorney had a portal that was now open for the public if you have an accusation, if you have a charge, if you've been sinned against, or someone in the organization has sinned against you. There is some other thing that's happened more broadly within the IHOP community. Here's the portal, and here's where you can contact us, and in confidence, in a secure place, share your concern, share your accusation, share your allegation, share your story. So with that happening, when I spoke at IHOP, I said, the whole truth has to come to light. The whole truth must come to light, whatever it takes to do that. And I said, if the church does not work together to see this happen, I will shout that from the rooftops, which I ended up having to do, unfortunately. So at the same time, we were watching people just kind of going crazy on social media. In other words, everyone was flipping out, and everything was swirling, and everyone wants to air an opinion. I think this and I think that without knowing the facts, right? And then at the same time, the accusers and the mockers joining in. And because, in my understanding, we had a way, we had a portal, we had a place for people to be heard because of that. And because there was an investigation taking place, I said, hey, just stay off, just zip it. If you use social media, use it constructively. But don't do it just as a place to air opinions, etc. Well, afterwards, it was tremendous flack. You're trying to silence the victims, silence the accusers, which was the opposite. Saying, let's silence all the noise so we can get to the real truth. But many were hurt by what I said, took it a certain way. So back in March, I made this video. I said, here's what I actually said. Let's play the clips where I actually said, there's only 2 times I addressed this. But let's go back to the clip from March, just so you can hear it out of the horse's mouth, all right? This is going back to March, because I posted something the other day, and now there's like a new attack, and as if I was saying certain things that absolutely wasn't. So let's listen to this back from March. So I hope you hear right there, I was not trying to silence the voice of victims or keep suppressed people's hurt and pain. My understanding was a process had already been set in place that was now being announced. Now, when I saw that process was not working, 1 week later, I was on the phone saying, you gotta make a change. And then 2 weeks later, in writing, you have to make a change. You must bring in a different third party. But the whole goal was, let's not litigate this online. What's the use of me sharing my opinion, you sharing your opinion? Let's use social media constructively. In other words, if I'm going to speak, I'm going to try to speak constructively, asking others, if you're going to post constructively, rather than airing opinions, because now there's a way that those that say I'm a victim, I've been hurt, there's a way now for you to air that. There's a way for you to deal with that. There's a way for you to get that out. There's a way for Mike to be held accountable. Let's go through the right process. So saying that, of course, that's what I hold to. Of course, that's a value. Just read Jacob James, the 3rd chapter. Maybe I'll read it on the other side of the break about the tongue. I mean, it's devastating the damage we do with our tongue. It's devastating how much false witness is posted, we bear false witness against each other and slander each other and tear each other down and spread rumors and innuendos and just, I think this, I think that. And we really need to zip that. However, in saying that, as this has dragged on, as the mess was much bigger than I had understood, my words were construed as you keep your pain to yourself. And if the only way to compare notes to someone else is through social media, you just have to zip it. I truly regret that that's what happened because that was never my intent. So I 100% stand by our calling to use social media responsibly before God. Look, if I take an hour a day and went on social media, I'd find people bearing false witness against me every day, posting things just blatantly false. You're doing this to cover things up because you're trying to keep your financial arrangement with these guys. I mean, nonsense, idiotic stuff like that. You wouldn't even think of in a million years. Or just false stuff. This one did this and this one, and it's all false. And then just our attacks and our mean-spiritedness. However, I truly regret not understanding the full scope of what was happening and how many had stories they needed to tell. And the fact that they felt suppressed, I truly regret that. All right, so I made that as clear as I could, as loudly as I could on our platforms. And to this moment, if anyone took my words to mean if you've been hurt, that you don't have, if the only voice you had was on social media, that you felt suppressed by me, from the heart, I regret that. That was not my intent. And I apologize if my words were not more carefully construed so as to help you understand exactly what my point was. The reason I bring it up again now is because many will still make that false accusation. And I posted something the other day, and I'll show you on the other side of the break. We'll put it up for you. I posted something the other day warning the mockers who gloat when others fall. We're just going to mock the charismatic church now and you know, and say these harsh things. That I said, careful, because your day is going to come. Now you're trying to suppress us again. No, far from it. So that's what we want to talk to today. I'm going to take your calls to 866-34-TRUTH. If you heard the music playing before, that was from the last show back in March. Now it's the real music for the break. So how do we give voice to the hurting, to those who've been sinned against, while not giving voice to the mockers? We'll talk it through today. 866-348-7884.
This is Michael Ellison, founder of Trivita Wellness. Have you ever noticed that you're not as strong as you would like to be? Is your muscle strength and even balance not like it was just a few years ago? I want to introduce to you MyoHealth, an amazing product packed with 9 essential amino acids that has been clinically proven to build strong, lean muscles at any age. This formula has 25 human studies and over $20 million in scientific research. It has been used by the U.S. Olympic swim team, the NASA astronaut program, the U.S. military, and yes, by thousands of people just like you. It has made such an incredible difference in my life that just recently, in my annual physical, my physician said, "You have unusual strength and balance for a man of your age." Thank you, MyoHealth. Here is our special offer for you as a Line of Fire listener.
Feel stronger, have better balance, and improved quality of life. Try MyoHealth for yourself. Order today and use promo code BROWN25 to receive 25% off your order. As a new customer, 100% of your order proceeds from your first order will go to support the Line of Fire radio broadcast. Call 1-800-771-5584 or online at Trivita.com.
With the MyoHealth, my strength has gone up. I was doing weight that I haven't done since my 20s. I usually ride my bike to the gym, and then on the way back, after I've done my weight training, I'm huffing and puffing. And on Sunday, I rode my bike there and back, and I had so much energy. I'm telling you, with the MyoHealth, amazing. I can't believe it.
Try MyoHealth for yourself. Call 1-800-771-5584, 1-800-771-5584, or online at trivita.com.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get on The Line of Fire by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
You know, I was smiling listening to that Trivita ad because I've been waiting for MyoHealth to be advertised again. I've been using it regularly. I feel it's made a great difference as I'm working out and things like that. So it's daily part of my routine, especially before workouts, sometimes, again, after a heavy workout. So check it out. Check it out for yourself. Remember, 100% of your first order goes to The Line of Fire. So go for it. And it's guaranteed, money back guarantee. So number to call, 800-771-5584. Tell them Dr. Brown sent you. All right. To get on the broadcast, and Brantley, you'll be first. I'll get to some more calls in a little while. 866-348-7884. Here's what I've also seen now. People have come forward out of the woodwork, burned, hurt, even sexually abused, other horror stories in church. Many times churches are set up not to believe the person who comes with that story, not to believe the spouse whose husband has beat her, not to believe the spouse whose husband is abusing the children, not to believe the woman who says that the youth pastor seduced one of her kids, not to believe the person that says that the pastor's been flirting with them and sending them sinful texts. Many times things are set up to protect the leader, to protect the husband, and this has been emerging more and more and more and more in an absolutely horrifying, mortifying way, because the church should be the safest place for people who are being hurt or abused or taken advantage of. And Christian leaders should be the most trusted people to give them a place of refuge as opposed to a place where they themselves are going to be preyed upon. God forbid, but we're hearing more and more about this, and we must know, and we must be better educated, and we must be better listeners. At the same time, I've watched a flood of unethical criticism, of false accusations swirling, of mockers, a swirl of it. So I posted this 4 days ago on Facebook to the mockers and critics who are bashing the church or vilifying charismatics. Careful, your day will come too. Better to get low than to gloat. Purifying judgment is coming for all of us. So I think it's pretty clear, straightforward in what it says. Well, then the false accusations go, you're just trying to silence the victim. What a time. No, quite the opposite. I am addressing those who, when they see other leaders fall, mock their movements, mock them as individuals, gloat. It's not a good idea. Let him who thinks that he stand take heed lest he fall. However, so that there would be no confusion, I then posted a comment which said this: at the risk of over-clarification, this post is directed to critics and mockers who gloat when others fall. It is not about people coming forward to expose sin. And that became the leading comment. So the first comment that would come up was mine. And then I added it into the post itself so there'd be no ambiguity. So it is important that we get this right, because God hates the bearing of false witness, and God hates the spreading of dissension in the body. These are called in Hebrew toeva, which is the same word, detestable, an abomination, the same word used for man sleeping with a man in Leviticus 18:22. All right? So, this homosexual practice is an abomination. Okay, same word. Those who bear false witness and those who spread dissension among brothers. Same word. So for those who take this opportunity to mock the leader who fell or was exposed, or the movement, or the denomination, or the group, or the church as a whole, careful, because the same way you judge others, you'll be judged. And when I see these things happening, I get on my own face and I say, God, search my own heart and purify me. And I fear the Lord all the more. That's what it's about. You better believe that warning stands. How then do we ignore those voices? By saying, if you've been hurt, if you've been sinned against, and if you're not getting a hearing, if you don't have an outlet in your church, in your denomination, how do we hear you? How do we get that voice out? How do we listen to you on social media? How do we give you a platform? How do we give you a backing? Those are two completely separate universes. Completely separate universes. And it's really important we get both right. All right, with that, let's go to the phones. We'll start in Virginia Beach. Brantley, thanks for calling the Line of Fire.
Hi, Dr. Brown. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
My name is Brantley. I'm in Virginia Beach. I am a former student of IHOP-U from IHOP KC.
Yeah.
And also, I grew up in Assembly of God Church and Pentecostalism. So I've known about you and your ministry since I was probably 10, 11 years old, something like that.
How old are you now, Brantley?
I'm 33.
Okay, that's a long time.
30,
Got it. All right.
Yeah. I'm curious about, you keep using the term mockers and in context of listening to the hurting and stuff. How are you delineating between the two?
Well, thanks for the question. There's a difference between night and day. One person is, I've been sinned against. I've been hurt by the church. I was victimized. There was a sexual predator that took advantage of me. I was abused by a domineering pastor that wouldn't allow people to think for themselves. Whatever the nature of sin was, right? Those are the people who've been hurt, whose voices we want to listen to. Some of them are a little cynical, skeptical now, but they've been burned, they've been hurt, and maybe they were grievously sinned against. They came with their case to leaders. The leaders rejected them. They have no outlet, so they're just posting online. We want to hear from them. Others are now gloating. You guys are just a bunch of deceived idiots. You're all fools. None of you really know the Lord. None of you are really saved. What you claim is the Holy Spirit is the figment of your own imagination. Ha, ha, ha. Of course you fall. This is a massive difference. There's no connection. It's like I said, between night and day. There's no connection between them whatsoever. One is in pain. The other is gloating and mocking. And not realizing, hey, you got your own clay feet. You got your own clay feet. And the mockers often spread falsehoods. I mean, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to dredge stuff up. And then this becomes the big topic. And now the social media swirl is around this. I can pull up for you and play clips of people absolutely bearing false witness online, saying things that are blatantly false against other leaders and making false accusations and in a disparaging tone, etc. And they did it irresponsibly. Even when confronted, stayed with it irresponsibly. That's dangerous. So we have to separate between the two. It seems pretty self-evident to me.
Is it okay if I respond
Please.
humbly to you?
Please.
So I've been very involved in the advocacy stuff and providing space to listen to different friends and people I didn't know stories from IHOP KC specifically. I think I want to pose a question, if that's okay. Do you think that there could be some misunderstanding with categorizing things as gloating? Because from my perspective, there has been people trying to bring attention to the harms of IHOP KC, at least my friends, for almost a decade now. And so, and I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, but I spent 5 years at IHOP KC, and outside of some people who had gone through the Brownsville School of Ministry and stuff, I didn't know of any connections really that you had or presence that you had there historically. And I appreciate that you went in to try to help. I do. But I also wonder if some of what you're perceiving as gloating and intensity is really an anger because nobody has listened.
Got it. All right, so stay right there. and we'll come back on the other side of the break. Stay right there, and we'll come back on the other side of the break and address that. Very, very fair question. So let's talk that through. Thanks and Brantley, I love your spirit. Thanks. I know you're being very careful, but make sure you just speak freely to me. All right, we'll be right back. Hey friends, Michael Brown here. My delight to serve as your voice for moral sanity and spiritual clarity. We are living in such urgent times today, friends, that all of us are in the line of fire. There's a target on your back. There's a target on my back. If you simply seek to live by biblical values or just conservative moral values, you could be canceled. You could be cast out. You could be put down. You could be silenced. I'm here to say, friends, that I am not about to be silenced, and I don't believe you are either. It is time for us to stand up. It is time for us to say enough is enough. It is time for us to push back in Jesus' name. Not fighting the way the world fights. No, overcoming evil with good, overcoming hatred with love, overcoming the flesh with the power of the Spirit, overcoming lies with truth. And that's what we're here to do on the Line of Fire broadcast. And friends, it's not just a broadcast. It is a movement of people around the world, God's people standing up, saying enough is enough, and saying, Lord, here we are. Send us, use us. I want to urge you today to join our support team, because we are on the front lines together. And we are literally touching people around the world, in America, in the nations, in Israel. And together with your help, we're going to amplify this voice and spread this movement around the globe. So I encourage you, go right now to thelineoffire.org, thelineoffire.org. Click Donate Monthly Support. Thelineoffire.org, click Donate Monthly Support. When you do, you become a torchbearer. We immediately send you 2 great life-changing books. We immediately give you access to many classes I've taught. Others have to pay to take those. You get them for free. Exclusive video, audio content, a new audio message every month, an insider prayer newsletter, 15% discount on our online bookstore, so much more. Join our support team today. Go to thelineoffire.org. Donate monthly support.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get on The Line of Fire by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Welcome back, friends, to The Line of Fire. Michael Brown, so glad to be with you. 866-348-7884, the number to call. So let me go right back to Brantley. I want to say 2 things first, but then give it back to you to speak. Number one, there is no connection in my mind between those who are angry and feeling at last, we knew something was wrong. At last, it's come out. No connection between that and the mockers, the gloaters. No connection whatsoever. That's number one. Number two, the fact that that's not clear means I have to do a better job of making it clear. All right? And then number three, when I spoke at IHOP, I had not the slightest clue that this was going to drag on weeks, months, and that we'd now be, in coming close to July? And the full investigation still hasn't come out, and there's still all this lack of resolution? Not the slightest clue. Not at all. And all I was focused on was the accusations against Mike. I was not thinking about thousands of people that have signed petitions saying they got hurt there, they got burned there, they had bad experiences there, etc. And that their only way of kind of airing things was just on social media saying, hey, this happened to me. Oh, that happened to you. Oh, that happened to me. So I was not aware of that or conscious of that. Otherwise, I would have phrased things differently in terms of what I was urging people not to do on social media. So I could have done a better job, which is why I said sometime later, I regret that my words were taken a certain way. I never intended that. If I had a better understanding of the depth of the problems, and if I had any clue of how things would drag on, I would have phrased things very differently. So for that, I'm sorry. I regret that. And if I'm not doing the best job now, let's fix it. Let's improve it, because that's my heart. So back to you, sir.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that apology, Dr. Brown. I think that's why a lot of us got so vocal after your initial message. And I mean, had friends make memes of your message, kind of laughing about it.
Yeah, I saw some of those. I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where some of our frustration lies, I think, is because that we were trying to tell, we were trying to speak up, we were trying to let people know that the hurt that went there, to be honest, we'd known that the hurt exists, and Mike was a shock to all of us, if I'm being honest. We had seen leaders abuse people for years. I'd seen certain members of that senior leadership team who you probably interact with bring people to tears on multiple occasions just through bullying. And so
let me just say one. Hey, just for conscience, let me just say this one thing. I've heard accusations. I haven't, there's a lot of stuff, right? And it was not my job to follow through on everything. So just for everyone listening and watching, Brantley's freely sharing his experience and experience of many. I can't verify that or deny that. Just for conscience sake, all right? I just want to say, so you can speak with total freedom, okay? But I don't want someone to think that I'm aware of I can verify every detail. So I'm not denying a word you're saying, but I'm just allowing you to speak, okay? So you can speak freely. So, but you're saying that in all of that, your issues over the years were not with Mike with a sexual sin or something. That was a shock to you. It was the system itself and the way people were treated and hurt, and that you and many others were aware of that. And when I said what I said, it sounded as if I was trying to suppress all of you. Because number one, I wasn't aware of all of you. And number two, I didn't mean that. But absolutely, if I was aware of all this, I would have phrased things differently. What happened was right before the service, we're talking to the pastor of the congregation, they're in different ones, and everyone was, it was like a bomb hit, right? And everyone kind of just flipped. And the moment you went to social media, you're like, everything got even more crazy. Your whole world, you couldn't even function. You couldn't even think. And everything swirling and didn't know what was true. And everyone had an air and opinion. It's just like, step back. Come on. Step back. We're going to get this. We're going to get to the truth. There's a process in place. So that's what I was trying to do, which I hope you can understand. The fact that it had that effect, even from people that love me and respect me, that blasted me, obviously I was missing something and my wording wasn't right. So again, I truly regret that. I was trying to do it's painful for me to think that happened. I was really trying to do the opposite of that. But anyway, thanks for being gracious towards me and understanding that. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I definitely don't envy your position and all that. You were flying in blind for sure.
Well, whatever. That's the way I was treated, or what my outcome is irrelevant, completely irrelevant to the story. The story is a lot of people were hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you can kind of understand the perspective of where we were coming from, and hearing you say that about being careful what we said on social media and not talking on social media. Mike, for probably well over a decade, would preach almost yearly a message where he would talk about the 7 signs of a cult. And one of those things that he would talk about was, the control of information. So
I got it. Yeah.
All of our red flags go off. Yeah. Heard you say that.
Yeah.
And that's probably where a lot of the hostility was coming from, is because we felt that that's what was going on, is that people were trying to silence people who had legitimate concerns.
Yeah. No, that's so helpful. That's so helpful, the way you put that and phrase it. Yeah, I hate that. I'm groaning just because of kicking myself, And again, in my mind, the whole thing is we got the process in place where everybody can get heard and we can get to the root of it. So now we can do it the right way. Again, I was just thinking about the allegations against Mike or allegations of sexual impropriety about others, not the larger issue of suppression of information or cult-like. And I think I mentioned this on the air. One pastor highly respects me, honors me deeply. Got on the phone with me one day yelling at me, "Shut up, Mike. He's never talked to me disrespectfully in his life. Shut up, Mike. You have no idea what you're talking about. This is like a cult, and there are thousands of people coming out." So again, I know many people have had great experiences at IHOP. People have been part of it for years, and people who love the Lord, but I understand there's a mass mixture in terms of experiences. And yeah, I was oblivious to that or insensitive to it, whatever. Nobody asked me to say that. That was my initiative. And my good intent ended up hurting people. And I'll apologize for it 100 times, because that hurts me to know that I became an adversary to people I was trying to help.
I appreciate that. as someone who's grown up in your circles of influence and such, and I know that you've written some books about deconstruction and such. I've not read them, to be honest. I've had to go through a journey since leaving IHOP KC in 2012 of kind of figuring out faith for myself, and some of these things that I was taught at IHOP that I'm realizing have perpetuated harm. And I guess if I was to ask something of you, Dr. Brown, it would be to just to be careful and listen to those who are outside, and not to other people who may not be ascribing to the same theology as you are anymore, or the same viewpoints. Because I think it's people like me and my friends who have grown up under the realms of influence that you've had power in, who have experienced these hurts, and our questions and our changing beliefs aren't because we desire to sin more, or because that we desire to any of the things that are said. I mean, you know how all the books that are coming out that are coming against deconstruction of these different ideas. But really, like we were just talking about this past week, that whenever I read Psalm 1 now, and I think about meditating on the law of the Lord day and night, we're just trying to figure out how to love people well and to love people like Jesus. And we're realizing whenever we show up in our churches on Sunday morning that we're met with hostility towards different things, that there's politics and all these different things that get mixed in that we don't have to dive into.
So tell you what, I want to throw something out to you, okay? So I think I've indicated to you my listening ear and what you're saying, and I hope you hear from my response my sincerity in saying all this, and welcoming you to speak and continue to ask you to speak. I think I've done a better job of listening and understanding to the larger needs than you might realize. In other words, don't take my comments in one specific situation with one specific goal in mind, more broadly, or my rebuke of the mockers. These are church mockers. These are not worldly mockers. These are mockers in the church who have been mocking and attacking with a wrong spirit for years that I'm calling out. But what I want to do is send you the two books that I wrote really addressing these issues. One has God Failed You, Finding Faith When You're Not Even Sure God Is Real, and the other, Why So Many People Have Left the Church. I even go through is, can deconstruction be a good thing? I have chapters like Permission to Doubt. The whole thing I'm trying to get people to do is to understand the why. And rather than look at these people as evil or I mean, the last thing in my mind is I think most people deconstructing are looking for a reason to sin. Plenty of people look for a reason to sin. Yeah, I get that, you know, but most people are genuinely struggling. The politicizing of the church, the idea that, you know, the church hates gay people, a superficial faith message that doesn't work, scandals. How do we deal with those? So I think I might be more sensitive to these issues than you realize. So you're under no obligation to read these, but at least look at the table of contents. Would you make a deal if I send them to you that you look at the table of contents? Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I'll crack them open and flip through it for sure.
All right, and then here's what you do. Then we do a part 2. When you do that, get back to me and tell me what you think I was missing. Or you can say, well, you do understand. Or look at it and say, okay, you were good on this, but you seem to have a blind spot here. And let's work this through together. Is that a deal?
Yeah, I'd love to continue the conversation.
All right, so tell you what, stay right there. We'll put you on hold, and our call screener will get right back on with you. And the two books, Chris, that we're going to send, Why So Many Christians Have Left the Faith, and Has God Failed You? We'll do that, and I'm having this slight issue with my calls recently with my screen, getting people on hold. So you're going to be like another few seconds before we go to our fade out music. There we go. So our call screener is going to get to you and get your information, and we'll continue the conversation. Aaron in Cincinnati, thanks for holding. You are going to be next When we come back on the other side of the break, you can join the conversation. 866-348-7884 is the number to call.
I'm Dr. Paul Burnett, a board-certified doctor of holistic health, and I've got some exciting news for you today about an amino acid formula scientifically shown to build lean muscle, improve strength, and reduce recovery time at any age. Dr. Robert Wolf was a researcher of muscle health who raised $20 million to fund 30 years of research and was able to perfect a formula scientifically shown to build lean muscle, improve strength, and improve recovery time at any age. And now this formula is available in Trivita's MyoHealth. Here is what Trivita members have to say. Patricia P. says, I'm 88 years old, a ballroom dancer, and compete in competitions. I could not seem to keep my muscle tone until I started taking MyoHealth. James H. says, I'm 60 and have experienced more solid definition of muscle, more energy, more stamina, and enhanced recovery after my workout. Now begin to imagine what you could do with more muscle, increased strength, and faster recovery. Whether you're a ballroom dancer like Patricia or someone looking to boost their fitness at 60 like James, now is the time to revitalize and rebuild the muscle, strength, and recovery of your youthful years with MyoHealth.
Build lean muscle. Improve your strength with MyoHealth. Order today and use promo code BROWN25 to receive 25% off your order. As a new customer, 100% of the proceeds from your first order will go to support the Line of Fire radio broadcast. So call now, 1-800-771-5584, 1-800-771-5584, or online at trivita.com.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get on The Line of Fire by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Line of Fire. 866-348-7884 is the number to call. Let's go over to Aaron in Cincinnati. Thanks so much for calling the Line of Fire.
Hi, Dr. Brown. Appreciate you taking the call.
Sure thing.
I think you're going to have a kind of a theme here today because I'm also another person also hurt by IOP-KC. I just had two questions, one of them more personal than the other. As a person that has lost a lot of family members due to my resistance of following Mike Bickle and things like that, when you talk about spiritual abuse and accountability, why is it so widespread inside the charismatic movement, it feels like? I know it's not exclusive to it, but it feels like it's very much widespread or much more done. And how it feels like a lot of charismatic leaders seem to endorse one another without really looking at things behind the curtains.
Right. So, yeah, I'm sorry for what you've been through. And, of course, this is going to be a theme as we're talking about these things. I'm just pulling up one of my books, Playing with Holy Fire, which came out in 2018, because I want to go through a specific list there in a moment. But number one, the endorsing people without really knowing them, I see that everywhere. I see it. There's the good old boys club in any group. You know, you kind of gather around different ones and you work together and you conferences or whatever. You know each other. You endorse one another's books, and that happens on a widespread level. Number one. Number two, there is certainly abuse everywhere. You know, there's been a massive scandal in the Southern Baptist Convention. There, I'm not going to mention specific churches, but mega churches that are cessationists with big accusations coming against them. It's everywhere. However, I believe it's more prevalent in the charismatic circles. So I agree with you. I believe it's more prevalent. Now, some might argue with me that deal with hurting people and say, no, you have, look, 'cause there's abusive pastors and don't touch the anointed, and it's the man of God, or how dare you question, etc., or don't buck the system. So that can happen anywhere. But in my book, Playing with Holy Fire, which came out in 2018, I have a whole chapter called Abusive Leadership. Abusive Leadership. And I made a list of why it is that in our circles, in charismatic circles, we might be even more prone to it, all right? So to answer your question here, let me go over to chapter 5 in Playing with Holy Fire, which is abusive leadership. And some of the reasons that we can be more prone to it in our circles, one is the idea of the anointing, right? The man of God, the woman of God with the anointing on their lives. You don't touch the anointed. Now, you may just have a church setting, non-Pentecostal, non-charismatic, where you can't argue with the pastor because he's the man of God, or he's the Bible teacher. How dare you question him? But there's something that goes even further. When I can say the anointing of God, how can you question me? The power of God comes through. God heals through me. So that's one thing that can be very, very abusive. Don't touch the anointed. Misuse of Psalm 105, verse 15. A second thing is that there can be prophetic manipulation. Well, God showed me. God spoke to me. Well, who am I to question him? God, and he had a dream about me, or this or that. So there can be there's the power abuse of the anointed man of God. There is the prophetic abuse of allegedly knowing, etc. And, out of those things, it becomes easier for us as Pentecostals and charismatics to be abusive. So a lot of the other problems, they're in the church world in general, sad to say. But I think that we have abilities to go even further with that, extra biblical revelation that we can hold people in bondage with, etc. I mean, there's some other things, but think of it like this. Who are you to argue with your pastor when God heals the sick through him? Who are you to question him when God just gave him a word of knowledge about someone in the fourth row dying of cancer, and he called them out, and that person was touched by God? Who are you to question them? The Holy Spirit speaks to them. Who are you to question them? It becomes very, very dangerous, and that's why I think we have an even worse tendency potentially for abuse in our charismatic circles. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, the prophetic history has been, something that I've kind of looked at for a long time, and obviously it was, it's now being discovered that much of it has been wrong, or at least parts of it have been wrong. And I was just wondering, why is, I understand the concept of, who are you to talk to? That's someone who's done these, supernatural things, but why has the charismatic church not looked at something like the prophetic history and questioned the people giving it, given how much sexual abuse and how much manipulation it seemed to have gone on by a lot of the people who gave it?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think most of the church is concerned with its own lives and its own problems, and it's not really thinking about the, quote, prophetic history. In other words, if you were an insider there, it would have more meaning. It's something I heard over the years, but I was never an insider, never connected to it, never close with, I met Bob Jones once, never met Paul Cain, these different ones. They were just names, you know what I'm saying? So some have thrown it out completely, never believed it for a moment. Others believe that there was truth to it, undeniable, and that Mike walked into something undeniable. I mean, it's a question. When we wrote up a document together saying, okay, because the investigation hasn't happened, we need to make a statement. Here's why Mike is disqualified from ministry, which is with great pain because of, the honor and esteem we had from him in the past, and just lay all these things out. That one of my colleagues said, I want to put in that that we don't throw out all the prophetic history. And he said, look, he witnessed things over the years that he knew to be true. And, it's however you slice the cake. And again, I know those that don't believe a single word of the prophetic history, believe it's all corrupt, all manipulated, all questionable, which I get. I understand where they're coming from. And I'm not defending it. This is not my hill to die on, all right? But It's interesting that there were these words decades ago about a worldwide prayer movement, about a worldwide prayer movement for Israel, like a bunch of things that happen that are pretty massive. And my take would be God had large purposes because of human sin, the thing got corrupted and then maybe along the way exaggerate it and twist it. I would trust, though, Aaron, that there are going to be some people that really give this careful attention in the years ahead, people that were close to it, and they're going to go back and scrutinize every word. And some will say, hey, we believe God did A, B, C. We believe D, E, F were manufactured. We believe G, H, I were mixture. So it should happen because of the prominence it had in the community. And was God saying something? Were there larger purposes of a worldwide prayer movement, a prayer for Israel, of preparing the church for times of suffering? Then we want to lean into those things that were of God. Where human beings messed up, where human beings corrupted the process, exaggerated, or where none of it's true, let's evaluate it. So it hasn't been my focus. And I think, frankly, there's just so much going on, so much swirling, just trying to find our way through it. But they're fair questions. They all have to be asked and sorted out. So how are you doing now in your own soul?
Honestly, I think that this has been God's grace towards me, this coming out, and it sucks that it had to be this way. But I'm going to be real honest. I had suicide ideation after listening to Sam Storms and Remnant Radio.
Explain a little more.
When they had the I think it was a 13-part interview with Sam Storms and Mike Bickle at IHOP, where they talked about the prophetic history and validated it.
Oh, so this is earlier on. Okay, got it.
Yeah, this was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I had that because I always saw Mike Bickle as manipulative and a narcissist. And when it seemed like God was validating all this, it made me feel like God doesn't really care about the people who have been spiritually abused by this place, and that God was going to bring back Jesus through the prayer movement, and spiritual abuse be damned. God's going to do what he wants to do and not care about the people who have been hurt by this place. And that made me think that God's not a loving God.
That's brutal. Man, that's brutal.
So when Sam Storm says, I'm still going to go back and look at the prophetic history and try to figure out what was true and what was not, that hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts real bad because it was used.
Yeah, so
It was used to destroy my family, and it was used to destroy a lot of people's faith.
Yeah.
I don't know what the redemptive purpose of that would be.
Yeah. Well, all I can say, and I've got to jump in only because I'm at the end of the show. It's horrific to hear this. I was never close to the prophetic history. It never affected me, impacted me. If it was all false, if it was all true, it is nothing to me. In terms of my own life, it was not part of my community the way it was part of yours, and the way it hurt you, your family, and all of this. Let's just pray that the truth comes to light, however painful. And I do believe God's a redeemer, and that he can bring light out of darkness. He can bring good out of bad. And this horrible, painful time of tears and upheaval and shaking is also going to be a time of healing and grace. So may a holy fear come on all of us in these days, and may redemption come. May he bless you, Aaron, with days of wholeness and strength, and may there be restoration of broken relationships and unity again in the family around Jesus. That's my prayer. Thanks for calling. We need to hear from people like you. God bless.